vinyl community, Elliot here, Lazy Dogs Records, and I found out about a 2020 vinyl tag that had started. Steve Carlson had posted his, and I saw Ron Haggerty's, and Vinyl Richie's got one that's kind of a parody of it. So I said, okay, let's see what I can do, what I can come up with, answering 20 questions, and I guess it's an attempt to get a string of people to do that. First of all, I noticed learning to navigate the vinyl community that everybody needs to have something to drink. Some folks have beer, some of them have wine, martinis, and coffee. I'll go with Diet Sun Drop, the great citrus soft drink of the Carolinas. Don't know if it's found many other places besides here, and sometimes around here it's hard to find, but I'm addicted to it. John from Digital Gramophone said he hated the day that they went from just high test Cheerwine and Sundrop and started offering diet versions. But I maintain I could never keep this girlish figure if I were drinking the high test versions. I need to diet. So, you do what you got to do. Okay, get going here. And the first question was your 2019 best find, and that's easy. This actually started in 2018 and extended into 2019. A lady near me had a collection of records that had been her husband's. Her husband's had intended to be a party DJ in the 1970s, and he didn't get an opportunity to do that very often before he passed away. And so she had these boxes of records that I think he had purchased them maybe up in New Jersey from a warehouse to start his DJing. And she was reluctant to sell me. We had to develop a relationship first, and I bought 20 or 30 of her records. I tried to buy them all each time, and she said, I might be able to get more for them. And kind of talked to her about the dynamics of, you're here in this little town, and yeah, you could haul these big boxes of records to the second floor there in Fayetteville, to one of those record stores, or down in that basement record store in Raleigh or something, and drive 30 miles or more to one of those places and ask them what they'd give for them, and in all likelihood they would want to buy a few of them, and you'd end up having to haul the rest of them all back, and maybe you get a little bit of money, but I'm willing to buy them all. So eventually I ended up buying them all over increments of maybe 40 each time. Great soul records. Very fortunate to get them. Like Ted Taylor, Greatest Hits, The Dramatics, Garland Green. This is just it's about 140 records total. Junior Walker and his All-Stars, King Curtis, Sweet Soul. Bunches and bunches of the Impressions albums. Love the Impressions. And this is everything from when they were, more like a Las Vegas show act to when they were a very cool, socially conscious band that they eventually became. All right, number 2, favorite album of 2019. This actually came out in 2018, but I got it in 2019. I had the CD before that, but felt like I really had to have it on vinyl. And that is the first album of new songs released by John Prine in I think 17 years. The Tree of Forgiveness, and John Prine, just that wonderful, wonderful songwriter and artist, one of our great American songwriters. About to be honored by the Grammys, I believe, maybe, or somebody this year, and this has got some great songs on it. When I Get to Heaven, everybody needs to listen to When I Get to Heaven, especially if you're, not a young buck. Egg and Daughter Night, Lincoln, Nebraska. It's a cool little 1967 Crazy Bone. Funny little story he's got going on there. Knocking on Your Screen Door, just a great artist, producing great work well into his 70s. Number 3, novelty album. Picked this one up at a thrift store. Silly Surfers. knew the sounds of the Weirdos. There's the Weirdos and the Silly Surfers. And this is one of those. Is this a Crown? Most of these are come out by Crown. This is just called Harry Records. And believe it, it's 1964 on Harry Records. Silly Surfers, Weirdos, music to make models by. So you can figure out who that's geared toward. In 1964, I was making models. This is actually in very good shape. I rated it as very good when I listened to it. And it's valuable. It has some value. I don't mean a huge amount of money, but it has value. 15, 20, maybe more dollars it's worth, and I probably gave $1 for it or something like that. Okay, number 4, really album that pays homage to another album. I didn't have anything for that. My apologies. 5, B-side. The Amazing Rhythm Aces put out a lot of great albums. This is Toucan Do It Too. Get it? Toucan. And side 2 is a very strong side on this album. It's got Who's Crying Now, Just Between You and Me and the Wall, You're a Fool, I'm Setting You Free, Geneva's Lullaby, and the title track, Toucan Do It Too. This is a great B-side of this album, and the A-side's great as well. We're looking for B-side. Okay, funky. I'll go with Ironing Board Sam. That's another record I got recently. This came out in 2015. Super Spirit, it's called. And this is a blues R&B album with a lot of funk in it. Very good. He was a musician that lived in Memphis, lived in New Orleans, still living, I believe, lived in Miami and different places. Originally from South Carolina. And he didn't make many albums. He had a few singles over the years and 1 or 2 albums that on regional labels and things like that. But that's very good. Ironing Board Sam. Okay, and Shelf Buddies. 2 albums that seem so different from one another. Okay, in the transition from the and P, Q, R. No Q's in this particular area of my collection. So between the P and the R, there's the great Graham Parsons with GP. And beside that album is Jenny C. Riley. And everybody knows about Jenny C. Riley. She had that huge hit, and Harper Valley PTA, and then it's that the curse of having that first song so big. But this is an interesting little album there. Now, Vinyl Richie, first thing in Vinyl Richie's parody edition was a sexy album cover. And let me tell you something. That is one good-looking woman. That is one good-looking woman right there. Jenny C. Riley. And let's see. Band I've seen. Okay, I'm so happy that before he passed away, I was able to see in a club setting, a fairly intimate club setting, the great Muddy Waters. And it was around the same time this album came out. It's one of 2 produced by Johnny Winter. The great Muddy Water. What a nice man. I actually, one of my highlights, musical highlights of my life, I think it was coming out of the bathroom, walking by the bar, and headed back to the stage, and I met him right there and introduced myself and shook his hand and told him how much I enjoyed his music and thanked him for his many years of creating music. I wasn't very eloquent about it. He was very patient. He was very kind and appreciative. Probably wondering himself, what is this stupid kid, because I was about 19 or so, talking about, but he handled it very graciously, and I appreciated that. And I was kind of in awe. Muddy Waters. And let's see, Number 9 is Only Have the Repress. I was at a record show in Carrboro, and I was very, very pleased to come across this album, the Louvin Brothers, Satan is Real, one of the great iconic album covers of all time. And this is a reissue, of course, but it is true to the original album cover. But I would love to have an original pressing on Capitol of the Louvin Brothers, Satan is Real. I've got something coming up that I'm going to be doing on the Louvin Brothers later on. I keep saying that. See if I ever get it done. Okay, then a discography that I own. Right up here, this section right in here is nothing but David Allan Coe albums. From the time I was 15 or 16, started listening to David Allan Coe, and I always loved Coe's music. And I have all of David Allan Coe's vinyl albums now. I'm sure he's released some CD stuff that I don't have. I don't have the pornographic album that he did. A couple of those, I don't have those or anything. But you know, he's a very weird person. This is long-haired redneck. I've got 27 albums up here. There are a bunch that are duplicates, because my brother, years and years ago, my brother gave me his record collection, and we had a lot of the same records. This particular album is one of our favorites. This has got Long-Haired Redneck and Texas Lullaby, Living on the Run, Family Reunion, Dakota the Dancing Bear Part 2. And so in his prime, he put out some really good albums. Number 11 is A Unique Center Hole. Okay, well, I don't know how unique it is, but this Rockpile album, I bought it when it came out in 1980. And it's a Columbia Records album, and I'm used to those red Columbia albums and the different variations, but this is a black and gold and white. So, and it says Viva Tonal Recording Electrical Process. So I don't know if there's anything that particularly significant about this that particular label on the album. This is original issue, probably original press. I bought it right when it came out, and it had the 45 of Nick Lowe and Dave Edmunds doing Everly Brothers songs with it. I've still got that as well. So it's one of the first presses. I don't know if it's worth anything or not. And let's see. Pre-band. Okay, this one tickles me. You know how sometimes you have the record labels try to take sell records by kind of making out something a band is something that they're not. Sometimes the bands didn't even exist. They just put out a record and called it by a certain band. Studio musicians did all the music, and they brought some people in there to sing, and whether or not they were really ever a band or not, it's kind of up in the air. I found this in a charity thrift in Sanford, the Now Generation, and I featured this one time before. Somewhere in this group of men and women is a young Jimmy Buffett, and of course I'm sure he did it just trying to make a little bit of money and keep his head above water while he was trying to make it in the music business. And let's see, movie and book recommendations. Okay, a few books I think everybody should have in their collection, and not just rely on going to the internet, is some encyclopedia type music books. Here is the All Music Guide to Country, and if you're wondering about an artist or when an album came out, or what their story might be, you can often find it in here, from the very obscure to Willie Nelson or Waylon Jennings or somebody like that. There's Barbara Mandrell, one of the top country singles artists back in the 70s and 80s, I guess it was. And there's a rock and roll version of something like that, the Rolling Stone Encyclopedia of Rock and Roll. Again, look somebody up. There's Ian and Sylvia and Ice Cube. You know, very divergent, and I have lots of information in it. You're not sure about something, and interested in the blues. This is a really good book. Searching for the Blues. Chasing That Devil Music, Searching for the Blues, and this is by Gail Dean Wardlow, who was living in Mississippi and did all kinds of research, and it's a lot of good information in here. Chris, well, there's a bunch of Chris's out there, but Blues Guy Chris, I bet you'd love this book if you hadn't already read it. I would check that one out. But anybody interested in learning more about the blues, that's a good source. And finally, another book released posthumously. He was working on it in his last years. Alton Delmore of the Delmore Brothers, his autobiography, Truth is Stranger Than Publicity. And this is he wrote this, and somebody took it after his death, and they got it published. They say it's very rare, but I got this. It's a Country Music Foundation pressing. I got this years and years ago, and I don't remember having any real trouble getting a hold of it. I don't know if I went to a bookstore and got them to order it or what, but anyway. Okay, but those are some books that you might find interesting. Underrated album. I rate this as albums that you see when you're searching the used bins, and tend to get in the dollar bins pretty early on in its life, or you find it at thrift stores all over. And that would be Pure Prayer League's Busting Out. You see this album all the time in the dollar bins and at thrift stores. And this is one of the great albums from an Ohio band. And at the time this album came out, Craig Fuller was writing a lot of the songs, doing vocals, playing guitar on there, and George Ed Powell and William Frank Hines. Now the band went through a lot of different changes. Craig Fuller was trying to avoid the draft, and after this album hit, and he ended up having to drop out of the band. He got a deferment and worked at a hospital for maybe a VA hospital or something for a year or two, and had to stay put. So he couldn't participate in the band for a while. It's a really good band. It's got just full of excellent songs, and of course the one you all know from the radio is Falling In and Out of Love, segueing into Amy. Great song, but there's lots. This whole album's full of great songs. I always like their album covers too. Okay, and Batting Average, constantly great albums. It didn't take me long to figure out who I wanted to highlight here. Little Feat. Now, Little Feat put out great albums. One of the band leaders, not the only band leader, but one of maybe the most imposing influence in the band early on, of course, was Lowell George. And Lowell George era Little Feat is great. But I hate it when people discount post Lowell George Little Feat. They continued to put out great albums and continue to perform sporadically now. These guys are getting pretty old. Several of them have passed away. But their output is always consistently good. Craig Fuller, lead singer for early Pure Prayer League, for a period of time was lead singer for Little Feat. There was an era of Little Feat when Craig Fuller was in the band, and they went through several different periods, and you can't go wrong with Little Feat album. Okay. Let's see, where are we batting? That was batting average 16. Same album, different cover. Okay, I've been getting into more and more jazz and trying to get some essential jazz albums as I learn more about it from Vinyl Rundown and Serve, and I'm trying to think of some of the other jazz. Tales from the Man, not Tales from the Man Cave. What's it, Chris? Something about Man Cave. Can't remember his actual title, but of course I figured I needed Kind of Blue. And actually, when I searched for this on Discogs, I found this issue. This is obviously a late reissue, Jazz Wax Records, and I think it's from France or somewhere. But of course, there's the normal cover. There's this one. Okay. And that was 16. Let's see. 17. Bought cheap, now worth a lot of money. I was in an antique consignment store near Fuquay less than a year ago probably, and they didn't have records like, stacks of records, but a few people had booths of antiques and stuff and had just a basket there with maybe 10, 15 records in it. Thumbed through there, and there was this Pop History Volume 7 Taste, and of course that's Rory Gallagher, his band. A very odd cover, but it's a 2-record set, and I'm not sure if it's the only 2 Taste albums, but it's 2 Taste albums put together in this form. And I paid $1 for it, and looked it up later on, and it plays very good, very clean. Looked it up, and it was worth a substantial amount of money. Next, Townes Van Zandt. This is one of my favorite live albums, live at the Old Quarter, Houston, Texas. And bought this new in 77 or 78, 77. I probably bought it in 78, but I think it's original pressing. I bought it around the same time it came out, and it's worth, 40, 50 bucks now. I just paid, regular price for a double album at that time, what, $5.99, something like that. Favorite drummer, Levon Helm, no question about that one. Music from the Big Pink. And what a great drummer, and can sing while he's playing the drums. It's a very, very difficult thing to do. And album that turned 20. I had to search through my CDs to find one of those. And Little Feat put out Chinese Work Songs in 2020. It's a very good album in CD form. And a trilogy of 3 albums that kind of are held together by a theme, and they're great pieces of work. All right. Some people discount Jimmy Buffett all because of the Margaritaville, Parrot Head, and all that sort of stuff. But let me tell you, when Jimmy Buffett was starting out, he put out 3 great albums. And some of the other albums are very good too. They're less consistent. But 3 great albums. And you show me how many bands or artists can put out 3 great albums, especially one after the other. Not many people can. Okay, there's Jimmy Buffett, a white sports coat and a pink crustacean. Of course, I'll take off on the white sports coat and pink carnation, And this is a nautical theme, of course. Living and Dying in 3/4 Time and A1A. Now, both of these came out in 74, I think. I'm not sure. I don't remember which one was first, but 3 great albums. You see those albums in the wild, I recommend you pick them up. Okay, so there's my 20 questions, and a quick shout out to a few people. Midwest Waves is just getting started in the vinyl community. I suggest you check him out, and he's working on a project about record stores. So if you're not subscribing to him, I highly recommend it. Bob Bradley does some very interesting stuff. If you're not already watching Bob Bradley's videos, I recommend him. Chris Prophy, there's a lot of Chris's out there. Chris Prophy, Musically Obsessed, does so many really good things. He plays guitar too, and so you hear him do some Johnny Cash and all kinds of stuff on there. Julius Jabber, or Sherv, as he's known, does some great stuff, especially jazz stuff. I learned so much jazz from him. And let's see. Randall Weaver puts out some very good videos. Check him out if you haven't already. Chris As It Spins, guy from the Midwest, always has interesting videos up. Blues Guy Vinyl from up in Canada. Love his videos. Check them out. Ron Haggerty, interesting video. He's pretty into metal type stuff and everything, which I don't really have a strong interest in, but I enjoy his videos anyway. And he talks about other things as well. But down in Australia, Grandma's Handbag. Check him out. Dean, I believe is his name. And they're going through some tough times with the fires and everything down there right now. So I hope he's all right and everybody else is all right as well. And I know I'm leaving a lot of people off, and I'm sorry, but this will do it for me. And I just want to thank anybody that sat through this whole thing. It's a long one, and I'll say to remember to be kind to your neighbor, and everybody is your neighbor. Goodbye now.